Hello and welcome to Dragon Puppet. My name's Thomas and today we are talking about the DM's Toolkit. So alongside your rulebooks and maybe your DM screens, the thing you're going to want to bring with you every time is your GM Toolkit. Now this is a little box with all the extra things you need to bring to your game, your dice, pens and pencils, counters, things like that. And today we're going to look inside what kind of things you want to put inside that GM's Toolkit and all the stuff that I put inside mine, and talk about why you want these things and how they can help you. So the idea of a GM toolkit I think probably comes from the starter sets that come with most RPGs. When you first want to get into the game, you buy the starter set and it comes with the basics you need to get the game rolling. As you begin to progress more and you start to play more games, you're going to start filling these boxes up with other things that you bring to every game, and it's going to become this little box crammed full of goodies, and that kind of is what the DM toolkit is. It's just sort of like a starter set that's been expanded upon and personalised by the DM. So what I've got here is the D&D starter set. This was the 5th edition one. There's not a whole lot in it, to be honest. You get dice, got a rule book and an adventure book, and some blank character sheets. It's a pretty good starter set. It's going to have everything you need to get going, but you're very quickly going to find that you're going to start to add more things into this kit as you start playing more games. The first thing I would add in here would be a bunch of spare pens and pencils, and maybe some little counters and stuff like that. So, as well as the D&D starter set, Wizards have also released the Essentials kit, which is kind of like an expansion on this. It comes with some of the same things. You get some more dice in here, and another adventure book, but you also get a bunch of playing cards. These are like cards with NPC information on them, extra treasure and stuff like that. These are really useful, especially if you're playing the adventure that comes in the Essentials kit. You also get in here a little fold-out DM screen. It's not a super high quality one. It's not like a hard rigid one like the ones that you can buy separately, but it's a pretty good one to get you started. And you also get a map in here, which is really cool. So next up, we're going to look at a different game. I've got here the starter set for the Dragon Age role-playing game, which is really cool. It's an amazing video game. I'm sure a lot of you play it, but there's also a role-playing game for it, and this is what's in their starter set. So, like the other two sets, this comes with a rulebook as you'd expect, and an adventure in there as well. And you also get a map in this one, which is really fun, and some dice, although the dice I have lost, or they've merged in with my other dice somewhere. I'm not sure where they went. But again, it's a pretty standard kit. You're going to want to expand this pretty quickly. And the last one we're going to look at before we look inside my DM toolkit is this really, really cool 1st edition Dungeons & Dragons starter kit. I believe this was the first starter kit they released back in 1983. They'd released rulebooks and stuff before, and supplements and kind of stuff like that, but I think this was the first box set they released. And when they released 4th edition, actually, they based the look of the 4th edition starter set on this original one. And if we take a look inside, you'll see it comes with a lot of the standard stuff here. This box probably set the bar for what should be in a starter set. You've got a bunch of these old school dice. It comes with a bunch of these little metal figures which you can use for players or monsters, which is really cool. None of the other starter sets we looked at came with these little miniatures, so that's fun to see. And you get this crayon, which I think is for actually rubbing into the dice, into the numbers of the dice, so you can see them better. Obviously these days, dice are printed with the usually printed with the numbers already a different colour. And you get the starter set rulebook and a player guide and a DM guide. So that is, that set the bar really for what to expect in a start set. So that is all the start sets we're going to look at. Next up, we're going to take a look inside my DM toolkit, which started out as one of these starter sets, and I quickly sort of started adding more stuff to it that I found useful. It was actually one of the first things I did when I started DMing games. I saw online that a lot of DMs were sharing what was inside their DM's toolkit, and I thought it was a really fun thing to do would be to like make my first DM toolkit, and it really motivated me and got me excited for DMing games because I had all this stuff that I'd gone around and bought these different bits, and it was a little moment for me to have my toolkit all ready. So this is the box I used for my DM toolkit. As you can see, it's made of plastic for a start, and it's transparent, so it's a bit tougher, a bit more durable. So the first thing you're going to see inside this toolkit is my whiteboard. A whiteboard is really good for any kind of role-playing game because sometimes it's just easier to draw what you're talking about rather than trying to describe it. Whether it's going to be a character, or an NPC, or a monster, or a map for an area, or a little symbol, or a logo, or something, or a crest, or you're just writing down quick notes, the initiative order for a combat perhaps, or you're trying to track how much health your big boss has left. Do it on a whiteboard. Say you're having stacks and stacks of paper getting everywhere, you can have it on a whiteboard, and as soon as you're done with it, just wipe it clean and you're done. The next up, and probably the most important thing in our toolkit, as you saw from the starter sets, is the dice. So you can see I've got loads of dice in here. Sometimes players are going to forget their dice, and sometimes you're going to be DMing a game with brand new players who don't own their own dice yet, in which case it's always good to have a bunch of spare dice in your DM toolkit that you can give out to the players. And you want a set of your own dice in there as well, whatever your favourite set of dice is for rolling when you're playing as a DM. You'll also notice I've got some more interesting and kind of unusual dice in here. So this one is used for determining where an attack landed on a character, which is really fun. So this is a weather dice. This is a cool little dice I use unless I've got a specific type of weather in mind, or we're in a specific geographical location. Whenever the players wake up from a rest, I can just roll this dice and immediately tell the players what the weather's looking like outside their window for today. And I think weather's a thing that people forget to describe a lot when they're playing role-playing games, but it can add a lot of character and a lot of depth to the adventure. And it might even start affecting your players' actions. If they know it's raining and there's going to be less people on the streets, they might plan their heist differently to if it was really sunny and it's really busy. I've also got some additional numbered dice here in unusual amounts. So I've got, I think this is a 16-sided dice, I've got a 30-sided dice and a 24-sided dice. They're not used very often, I'll be honest with you, but it's fun to have them in there for the rare occasions when I need a bigger dice like that, or just for really dramatic moments I can just get them out, and players are always intrigued by unusual looking dice. There's also a pair of loaded dice in there, but the less we talk about that the better. I've also got a blank 20-sided dice in there, which I don't use very often again, but sometimes you're going to want to use it for a specific puzzle or adventure. You can draw little symbols on there with a wet erase marker, and then once you're done with the adventure you can rub it off again. So this is my random mood generating dice, which I can use for NPCs that I just have to improvise on the spot. So if the group walk into a shop, I can just quickly roll this and it will tell me that the shopkeeper is in a good mood today, and that will immediately start affecting obviously the role-playing aspect of the game. Of course, you don't have to always randomly generate moods. You might have a mood in mind for this shopkeeper, but sometimes it's fun just to roll it and have a randomly generated mood for an NPC, and then have to come up with a reason why maybe, or an expanded backstory like that. So those are all the dice that I have in my DM's toolkit. What should we look at next? I've got these really cool stickers in here, which are from an artist called Faye. She's on Etsy as Tin Trees. I'll put a link in the description. She makes these really cool little stickers which DMs can award players during or after the game. So you've got their most hilarious death, broke the game, excellence in the face of idiocy. These are all cool. I've used, as you can see, I've used a few of them, and I've bought a few of these sticker sets because I get through them quite quickly. And players really look forward to being awarded these. Sometimes they'll go out of their way to try and unlock. These are kind of like achievements, I guess, like in a video game where you get achievements. This is sort of the equivalent in D&D or RPGs, where they do something really, really out there, and I can give them a sticker and they'll stick it on their character sheet, or they'll stick it on their notebook or something. Faye is a really talented artist on Etsy. Definitely check them out. I hope they make more of these stickers because they are really cool, and I really enjoy them. My players enjoy them a lot as well. Pretty straightforward. A little calculator in here. I think that was just from that was like £1. A very cheap little calculator that runs on a little solar cell, so you don't have to replace the batteries. A lot of DMs don't like having their players have mobile phones at the table while they're playing, but a calculator can be useful. So having this at the desk, in the middle of the desk, just so that all the players can quickly grab it if they need to make a little calculation. Something else that doesn't require much explanation is spare pens and pencils. So obviously having extra pens and pencils is going to be useful for a game, writing notes, or adjusting character sheets and stuff like that. I also have my wet erase markers and my dry erase markers in here. The wet erase ones is what I use on this battle map, which is from Chessex, and you can write on here with wet erase markers, and you can create maps and all kinds of cool stuff, and then when you're done you just get a wet cloth and rub it away and it's gone. And I've got a couple of different colours. I've got blue ones and green ones, so I can draw trees and bushes as well as like rivers and stuff. Just adds a little bit of depth to it. These are some more interesting pens that I've got in my DM's toolkit. So these are, they call themselves secret agent pens. They're basically UV ink, and the lids have a little UV torch in them. So you can write an invisible message in the ink and then you reveal it using the torch. And that's a really fun little thing you can do. It can represent a magical item in the game, or you can use it for a puzzle. Perhaps earlier on in the adventure you gave your players a letter from somebody and half the letter was, invisible, in written invisible ink. Players didn't know that necessarily until later on in the game when they discover like a magical lantern which reveals hidden magical messages, and then I can give them the UV torch, part of the pen, and the players can reveal. They suddenly start shining the torch on everything that I've given them over the course of the game. They're shining the torch everywhere, and they're discovering these hidden messages that have been dotted around the place. Obviously, you wouldn't need the pen to do that kind of puzzle. You can just describe it. But if you can get the players to actually physically do it themselves, that's going to really engage them in the game and make it much more fun. If you've got like a physical prop you can use, that's really good. They don't get used often, these pens, but when they are used, they're really popular. And because they're only very small, I can just keep them in this toolkit. The other really cool thing I've got in here, the other cool pen, is these scent pens, which I got from Eldritch Essences. They're a kind of fantasy themed candle company, but they also made these little scent pens which spray out different scents. I think they might have gone out of business, or they've stopped business temporarily at the moment. I'll still put links into their Etsy page or their Facebook page in the description. I hope they start making more of these soon, because these are really, really fun and I always get great feedback in games. So for example, if the players are returning to the tavern and I tell them the tavern's burned down in their absence, and I can have some ambience tracks, some music playing which has some fire cracking or something like that, and I can describe what's happening. That's going to be really good and immersive for the players. But if I can just quickly spray this and suddenly all the players can actually smell the smoke, that's going to add a whole extra layer, like a whole dimension of immersion to the game, which is really cool. I have 5 of these pens. I have the fire one, I have a marketplace one which kind of smells like spices, I have a tavern one, I have an ocean one, and a forest one. And these are really, really cool. Like I say, I wish there were more of these smells. You can use candles, obviously, to capture that smell. If you had a good selection of candles, you can get candles of all kinds of fragrances, and you can just quickly light them and it will generate that ambience for the players. But these spray pens are so convenient and they fit inside my DM toolkit really, really easily. I just hope they make more of these things because they are great. Next up, let's take a look at these story cubes. Rory's story cubes, they make a bunch of these in different genres. The ones I've got here are the Fantasia ones, which are like fantasy ones. They do sci-fi ones, they do generic ones. So you could use this if you're trying to generate an adventure. On the spot, you can just roll these dice and use the picture cues to sort of inspire your adventure, the story for your adventure. Or you could use them in the middle of the game. Say, a bard comes over to the group while they're in the tavern and asks them for a gold piece, and he'll tell the group his story. And then you can roll these dice quickly and improvise the story the bard is telling the group, or stuff like that. Or you can use them to generate backgrounds and interesting histories for characters. You roll the dice again, and you get all these little picture cues, and it will suddenly give you an idea for a character background or a background story. So the ones I find the most useful are the fantasy ones, but have a look online and see other ones they do, and maybe grab a couple of sets. Next up, as you can see, I've got a bunch of little wooden pegs in here, all pegged onto a bit of card. Right now these are all numbered and they've got a couple of characters' names on them, but I have a whole bunch of blank wooden pegs as well, which I can use. So these pegs serve kind of 2 purposes in the game. You can use a blank peg to hold a piece of information onto the back of your DM screen. But if you write on them as well, you can use them to track initiative in combat, or just keep track of what characters are currently in the room or in the game with you. So you could write down all the character names, stick them on, and the numbers I would use for monsters. If there's 5 goblins in the room, I'd put the pegs on numbered 1 to 5, stick them on the DM screen. I can use that to track the initiative and also show the characters who's in the room. And then on my side of the GM screen, I can have the pegs holding up stat blocks maybe, or extra information that I want to use for the characters or the monsters, which is really cool. Just quickly, as well as my whiteboard marker, I've got a little eraser there. So these 2 little pots I've got in here are kind of like tokens and counters. So if you've been playing for a while and you want to invest in miniatures, that's a really fun route to go down. But it's always good to have some counters as a backup, because you're not going to have a miniature for every single monster and every single character. So I carry a little box of tokens with me. You'll see there's a few different types. I have these kind of little pawn ones, which I use for player characters or really important NPCs. And I have a bunch of blank kind of circular disc tokens, which I can write on with my wet erase marker. I can number them, or I can write initials for NPCs. And different colours, I use the white one for kind of passive or unknown creatures, and the green ones for allies, and the red ones for monsters who are attacking. And I've got small ones as well for like minions or for tiny creatures. Obviously, if you have got a grid, you definitely need tokens to represent where exactly characters and creatures are on the map, and these are perfect for that. I got these again from Chessex. Chessex are great, as if you know about Chessex, you'll know they make loads and loads of amazing dice, and they also have a couple of other interesting accessories, like this game mat, and like these tokens as well. I try to get a set of dice that matches up to each of these little pawns that I have as well, so that when I have a new group of players, I can give them a set of dice, and I can give them a matching little counter on the map. Just easier, you know, for new players to keep an eye on where they are, which character is theirs. If it's not a miniature, it's sometimes hard to remember. So if it matches the dice you're using, that's really, really useful. So I use these tiny little hearts to show when certain conditions are being applied to characters or creatures. You know, being poisoned, being stunned, being paralyzed, for example. You just put the little heart next to the token, and then everyone can see exactly what states the different creatures are in. I think I got these from a little children's jewellery making kit. It was only a couple of pounds, I think, and it came with a bunch of other bits, but the only thing I wanted was these tiny little hearts, which are, you know, come in useful. I use them in every single game. And, you know, some people can use, they use glass, little glass beads. You can use anything really, but for me, these little hearts are the perfect thing. Just a couple of things to go now. We have these enemy face cards, which are really useful. It's just a deck of cards with lots of little faces on them. This is the enemies deck. They do make other decks for like NPCs and things like that, but the enemies deck is my favourite one. It has loads of interesting creatures in there, and on the back you can write extra information about the creature, or if you prefer, which I do, to paperclip your information on rather than having to write on the card itself, then you can do that. These are good for like big bosses or recurring NPCs, because once the players have a face they can remember, they're more likely to remember that character than if it was just a name. So I use these for characters that I want the players to remember between sessions. And then the last thing, just quickly, is these little revision cards, which are colour coded. You can get these in stationery shops for very cheap. I just use these for when I'm planning an adventure. You can colour code them, so I'll usually write down NPCs on the pink ones. You know, each card is a different NPC, so when I'm playing a game I can quickly grab the card and I can see all the information about that NPC. And I can even use the pegs on my DM screen to hold these cards up, so I can see which ones are which. I can use different colours for different things, so red for characters, yellow for treasure, green for different locations, and blue for puzzles. And then I can very quickly have a whole adventure in a kind of like deck format. Rather than having loads and loads of notes, I just have a couple of cue cards, and that has in it everything I need to run the adventure. You can also use these little revision cards to make little standees with character names on it, especially when you're playing a new group. People tend to forget all the different character names they're introduced to, all the different player characters. So it's cool to write down you can get the players to write down their character names and stick it in front of their character sheets, just so that you can look around the table and you can immediately remember and you can see all the different characters, and when you're role playing you can actually address characters with the correct name, especially with some of the funky character names people come up with. It's much easier to have them written down, especially for the first few sessions. So that is what's inside my DM's toolkit as of right now. There's still a few things I want to add to it. I'm sure you're thinking of things I've forgotten that I need to add to it. If you can think of something else that I've forgotten, let me know in the comments what it is, and I'll add it to this kit. And also let me know what's inside your DM's toolkit. What stuff have I got that you hadn't thought of, and what stuff have you got that I didn't think of? If you enjoyed this video, then that is amazing. Thank you for watching for this long. This is the first video I've made on this channel, and I'm really excited about going forward with this. I want to make a new video every week, talking about different aspects of role-playing and tabletop games and how we can immerse ourselves more in them and really engage with the community to get just the best out of this hobby. It's such a fun hobby, and there are so many ways we can engage with it outside of just rolling dice and reading rulebooks. There's so much more to it, and I really want to get stuck into that with you guys. So if you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments. I'm looking for all kinds of critique so we can improve this. I'll be doing another video next week. Hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you very soon.